Hello everyone and welcome back for some more TV and music, gossip, secrets and drama. You all seem to like my previous videos about X Factor contestants and how the show affected their lives, and I'll link to my previous videos in the description. So today we're going to look at another X Factor contestant who has spoken out against the show, which is Lucy Spraggan. This video is a bit different because Lucy was actually one of the biggest success stories the X Factor ever had, right up until she mysteriously left the competition partway through the live shows. At the time, we were just told that she had left because she was ill, but it took 11 years for the real shocking truth to come out, and when the truth finally did come out, it led to apologies from the network, the production company, and from Simon Cowell himself. So today we'll be going through Lucy Spraggan's time on the X Factor, the controversy about her music, the truth about why she really left the competition partway through, and what she's doing now. All that and more coming up in today's video, so let's get started. I'd also like to say before we start that this video will contain certain topics that some viewers may find distressing, so please bear that in mind. Lucy Spraggan's X Factor audition. Back in 2012, Lucy Spraggan auditioned for Season 9 of the X Factor UK, which is the same season as Zoe Alexander, aka the Pink Singer, which I did a previous video about. Lucy was born in Canterbury in the south of England, but she grew up in the small town of Buxton in Derbyshire, and she came out as gay when she was 14 years old. Before the X Factor, Lucy was already writing and performing her own music. In fact, back in 2011, she recorded an entire album called Top Room at the Zoo in a friend's bedroom, and she released it herself. But she wasn't making a living from music, so money was tight. In fact, during her X Factor audition, when the judge Talisa asked her what she did for a job, Lucy said, quote, "I am the person with a clipboard in the street that you try to avoid. I sell baby photos for 99p. Lucy was 20 years old at the time of her audition, and it aired on the 25th of August 2012. Instead of singing a cover version of an existing song like most people do, Lucy sang one of her own songs, which is called Last Night, also known as Beer Fear.
Last night I told you I loved you, woke up, blamed it on the vodka.
The audience loved her audition so much that they were chanting for more by the end. She then moved on to the next round, and her audition went viral, which made her an incredibly popular contestant right from the start. But what happened next had never happened on the X Factor before. Because Lucy had already released her own music independently before the X Factor, her songs were still available to buy online. So as soon as her audition aired on TV and went viral, people went and started buying Lucy's music. The song Last Night, or Beer Fear, shot to number 2 on the iTunes chart and was on track to become one of the biggest songs in the country that week. However, the X Factor's response to this was to ask Lucy to take all of her music off sale. So all of her tracks and her album were removed from iTunes and everywhere else. A spokesperson for the X Factor explained, quote, "All contestants have been asked to remove their recordings, as it is essential that all of the contestants are treated fairly during the competition and, where possible, receive the same exposure." So Lucy, who remember was only 20 years old at the time, went along with it all and deleted her music as well as all of the income that she was getting from it. She told BBC Newsnight, quote, "Obviously I was asked and I've obliged because you've got to do what you've got to do to get somewhere in life. There's always going to be a part of me that's disappointed about it, but if you think about it in the long run, with things which could be happening in the future, they're going to be substantially better. It doesn't matter." But even after Lucy's music had been pulled off sale, her song still charted at number 11 that week, and the album went to number 22. And this meant that Lucy was the first contestant in the history of X Factor to have a top 40 single and a top 40 album before the live shows had even started. Lucy left the X Factor. So after her incredibly popular audition, Lucy went through to the boot camp stage where she sang the song Moves Like Jagger by Maroon 5. But surprisingly, it did not go very well and her performance was described as awkward and messy. But she was given another chance and the judge, Talisa, asked to hear one of Lucy's own songs instead.
Tom was born in 1942 with eyes of blue, and the doctor said his birth was far too fast.
And she got a standing ovation from both the audience and the judges and then burst into tears. She then made it through to the live shows as one of Talisa's acts. Then, during the live shows, Lucy became one of the contestants that got a bit of a reputation for being a party girl. This is because, in October 2012, Lucy and fellow contestant Rylan Clark were actually thrown out of the 5-star hotel in London where all of the contestants were staying after a drunken night out. The producers then moved the pair of them to a cheaper hotel near the studios as a punishment. And Lucy tweeted at the time saying, "Me and Rylan Clark are partaking in a small vacation from the hotel for a few days. Our most sincere apologies for our #BeerFear behaviour." So at this point, the story that the newspapers were running with about Lucy was that she was a fun party girl who liked to drink, and this is going to become important later on. But Lucy said that the producers of the show actually encouraged this party girl image. She later said in an interview with The Guardian, quote, "You tell producers things about yourself and they say the public is gonna love that. They encourage you to be a caricature of yourself. We were always told to tell the publicist anything that worried or concerned us, but once you did, as if by magic, it was those stories that ended up being printed." Lucy has also said she doesn't think that she and Rylan actually did anything to deserve being thrown out of the hotel in the first place. She said, quote, "I remember thinking, what? We haven't even done anything. Nothing that would have warranted being chucked out of the hotel. Rylan is the most polite, respectful person in the world, and he tried to get to the bottom of it and got the impression that it was all helpful to our storyline." And this next part is the part that really matters, because all of the other contestants were staying on a private floor at the Corinthia Hotel with 24-hour security provided by the show. But Lucy and Rylan had been moved to a different hotel on the Edgware Road, which did not have any of that security. Then, in week 4 of the X Factor live shows, Lucy did not perform. The show said that she was too ill and she was given an automatic pass straight through to week 5. But then, on the 3rd of November 2012, Lucy announced that she was leaving the competition altogether. She explained that it would not be fair for her to be given a second free pass while everyone else was singing for their place. And so that was the end of Lucy's time on the X Factor. She overall finished in 9th place, and the season went on to be won by James Arthur. So as far as the public was aware, Lucy left the show because she was too ill. And that's what everyone believed for the next 11 years. But then the real shocking truth came out. Lucy's tell-all book and the shocking truth. In July 2023, 11 years after her time on the X Factor, Lucy released her autobiography called Process: Finding My Way Through. In the book, as well as in an interview with the Guardian newspaper, Lucy revealed what really happened to her and why she left the X Factor. Lucy explained that in October 2012, during the taping of X Factor, she had been on a night out at a club in London, and they were celebrating fellow contestant Rylan Clark's 25th birthday. And members of the X Factor production team were also there. Lucy, who was 20 years old at the time, drank too much and passed out. She was then taken back to the contestants' hotel by a member of the X Factor production team, and a porter who worked at the hotel offered to help get her up to her room. But according to Lucy, that porter later came back to her room on his own, used his staff keycard to let himself in, and he sexually assaulted her. The keycard that the porter used was traceable, and it later became a key part of getting him arrested and convicted. Lucy described waking up the next morning by saying, quote, "I woke up the next day with this sense of sheer dread. I don't think I've ever felt that level of confusion since. I knew that I'd been sexually assaulted, but I could not process that. So I put my clothes on and went into autopilot." And this is the part that connects it all back to the X Factor. After the attack, Lucy was put on a course of medication called PEP or PEP, which is given to people to prevent them from contracting HIV after having unprotected sex. And the side effects of this medication can be very severe, and it made Lucy so unwell that she physically could not carry on competing on the X Factor. So the illness that we were all told about at the time was actually real, but it was not the full story. Lucy also said that she wanted to tell people the truth back then, but she was told that doing so might damage her further career, so she didn't. Lucy's attacker later pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. And it's worth pointing out that in order to tell this story in 2023, Lucy had to waive her legal right to a lifetime anonymity as a victim of a sexual offence. So she didn't have to say any of this, she chose to speak out. At the time, the rumour of Lucy's assault did actually leak to the press, and Lucy believes it was actually leaked by the Met Police. But because of her right to anonymity, she could not be named. Lucy added that cyber experts were even brought in to delete the rumours that were going around on Twitter and in the comment sections. And when her attacker was eventually convicted the following year, the public gallery of the courtroom was full of journalists. But due to the anonymity rules, the only thing they were allowed to report at the time was that the victim was an unnamed television star. The aftercare controversy. It was then what Lucy said next, which is when the real controversy started. Lucy revealed that in the immediate aftermath of the attack, she was given financial and medical support by the X Factor, but after that she got nothing. She wrote in her book that, quote, "No one ever contacted me to ask if I was okay. No one called or emailed when the trial was over and he was convicted. No one offered me rehabilitation or ongoing mental health treatment. I was on my own." Lucy also questioned the drinking culture on the X Factor and the free alcohol that was supplied at the party. She said, quote, "It was inappropriate for anybody, including contestants, to be drunk. How can you fulfill your duty of care when free alcohol is involved?" But Lucy did say that her mentor, Talisa, did come and see her after it happened. Lucy wrote in her book, quote, "I was grateful that she'd come to see me, but I felt like I had no independent advice." According to Lucy, Talisa said how sorry she was, and then she told her, quote, "This will stay with you for the rest of your life." Lucy said, quote, "I got the impression that she was saying that it would be a stain, but I don't know if she was regurgitating something someone else had told her to say." However, it should be noted that one of Talisa's representatives told The Guardian at the time that Talisa went to see Lucy of her own accord, and that she was referring to the trauma that Lucy personally would feel. And Lucy's issue does seem to be with the show itself rather than with Talisa, because Lucy said she had no idea until she started writing her book that Talisa was only a couple of years older than she was, and so it was inappropriate that Talisa was the one who got called into that situation in the first place. Then, in 2021, while Lucy was writing her book, she wrote to ITV, the production company Fremantle, and Simon's music label Psycho, setting out what had happened to her and asking them to respond. In the letter she wrote, quote, "This letter is to offer you an opportunity to respond, and if you consider it appropriate, apologise." 2 months later, ITV replied. They apologised that her experience on the X Factor had been, quote, "an unhappy one," and they acknowledged that what happened to her, quote, "must have been devastating." But they disagreed with Lucy that they had fallen short in their duty of care. Lucy said, quote, "After 10 years of healing, I then had a huge corporation say, 'We never gave a bleep about you in the first place. It cracked me.'" But it was only after all of that, when Lucy's story became public in 2023, that ITV and the production company actually gave official public statements. ITV said, quote, "We have the deepest compassion for Lucy and everything that she has endured as a result of this horrific ordeal. We commend her resilience and bravery." However, they also pointed out that, quote, "The X Factor was produced by Thames and Psycho, who were primarily responsible for duty of care towards all of its programme contributors." And they said that their oversight procedures had improved since. Then, Fremantle, which is the company behind the production of X Factor, said, quote, "The serious sexual assault suffered by Lucy Spraggan in October 2012 was a truly horrific criminal act for which the perpetrator, who was not connected with the programme, was rightfully prosecuted and imprisoned. Whilst we believed throughout that we were doing our best to support Lucy in the aftermath of the ordeal, as Lucy thinks we could have done more, we must therefore recognise this. For everything Lucy has suffered, we are extremely sorry." And this issue of inadequate aftercare is something that has come up in all of my X Factor videos. In fact, Debbie Stevens said that there was no aftercare or support on shows like the X Factor, and they just use the contestants for what they want. The other person who was inadvertently involved in this situation is Rylan Clark, because it was after his birthday party that this assault happened, although he was of course not responsible for it. But he had also kept this whole situation quiet for 11 years. In 2024, Rylan spoke out about the situation and said that it was, quote, "a horrendous period for him." He was 24 years old on one of the biggest shows in the country, and the morning after his own birthday party, a friend told him that she had been sexually assaulted. Lucy has been very clear that Rylan was in no way involved, and in fact, the way that Rylan handled that night and what he did afterwards was actually crucial in getting her attacker convicted. Because after the porter had helped Lucy up to her room originally, he deliberately left the door on the latch so that he could easily get back in later. But Rylan went in to check on Lucy in the meantime, and when he left, he made sure to shut the door properly behind him. This meant that when the porter came back up, he had no choice but to use his key card to open the door. And that's exactly what created the record of the key card, which was later used to identify him. Later, when Lucy told him that she had been assaulted, Rylan stopped anyone else coming into the room so that the evidence was not destroyed, and he was the one that reported it to the production company. Rylan also later gave evidence that helped get Lucy's attacker convicted. Rylan later said that when it comes to how X Factor dealt with it all, there was, quote, "a lot that could have been improved." Simon Cowell's apology. Because Lucy said that she felt like she got very little aftercare from the X Factor after her assault, and they only apologised in public because her story had become public, you may be surprised to hear that one person who did reach out to Lucy was the creator of the X Factor, Simon Cowell. And this is kind of surprising because Simon was not even a judge on Lucy's season, so he had never met her. But in 2021, he got in touch with her privately. Lucy later described in an interview with BBC Breakfast that Simon called her, and his first words to her were, quote, "Lucy, before you or I say anything else, the first thing I need to tell you is that I am sorry." And Lucy got emotional talking about it and said, quote, "It makes me emotional because no one else said sorry. He wasn't even a judge, and he, as a human being, gave me everything I needed in 2 words." Simon later released his own public statement which said, quote, "What happened to Lucy was horrific and heartbreaking. When I was given the opportunity to speak to Lucy, I was able to personally tell her how sorry I was about everything she has been through. Although we met under tragic circumstances, a genuine friendship and a mutual respect has developed between us. Lucy is one of the most authentic, talented and brave people I have ever met." And the two of them have been close ever since. In fact, Lucy signed to Simon's music label Psycho Publishing at the end of 2022. Then, in June 2024, Lucy got married to her wife, Emilia, and Simon was the one who walked Lucy down the aisle. Lucy is estranged from her own father, so she asked Simon to give her away while the two of them were on holiday together in Barbados. What is Lucy doing now? One thing that is quite interesting to note is that although Lucy became well known for her song Beer Fear, she doesn't actually drink alcohol at all anymore. Lucy quit drinking completely in July 2019 after she had a bad night out while she was on tour in Las Vegas. She explained that she started drinking at 12 years old and she had known for a long time that she had a problem with drinking, and she later released a single about it called Sober. Another interesting thing about Lucy is she revealed in her book that as a child and a teenager, she identified as a boy called Max, and she now identifies as non-binary. In 2025, Lucy became very outspoken about trans rights, and she used her own experience to make her point about banning trans women from women's toilets. She said, quote, "I was attacked by a man in a locked hotel room. What makes you think that the symbol above the door is going to stop a man from sexually assaulting you?" In terms of what Lucy is doing nowadays, she has released 8 studio albums, and 2 of them have gone to the top 10 in the UK. Her album Join the Club got to number 7 back in 2013, and her album Choices got to number 5 in 2021. In 2024, Lucy released a duet version of her song Sober with Robbie Williams. Then, in 2025, she released her 8th studio album called Other Sides of the Moon, which is mostly reworked versions of her older songs, plus a few newer songs about grief and her wife. Simon Cowell was actually the A&R director for the album, and Lucy described him as a, quote, "professional perfectionist," and he was so meticulous that at one point Lucy thought the album was never going to get finished. Also, in 2025, Lucy took part in Celebrity SAS Who Dares Wins, which is a TV show where celebrities go through a version of the SAS Special Forces selection process. And she was one of only 3 people to actually pass the course. Lucy described finishing it as, quote, "exhilarating and affirming." As of 2026, Lucy has been touring around the UK with more than 20 dates, and in September she's headlining the Recover Fest, which is a free festival celebrating recovery and living without drugs and alcohol. She is still married to Emilia, and the two of them now live in East Yorkshire. And so, although Lucy had to drop out of the X Factor because of a horrific incident which was hidden for over a decade, she has clearly come through the other side even stronger and has now built a successful career outside of the show, and we'll have to wait and see what she ends up doing in the future. So there you go, there was a video talking about what really happened to Lucy Spraggan from the X Factor. Did you know about any of Lucy's story before watching this video? And do you think shows like The X Factor need to do more to look after their contestants? Let me know in the comments. If you want to get early access to my videos as well as other benefits, please consider becoming a member of my YouTube channel. It just costs a few dollars a month and it does really help to support the channel, and I'll put a link to that in the description. Please like and comment on this video because it does help to boost it in the algorithm and promote it to more people. And please make sure you hit that subscribe button if you like these videos because it does make a big difference to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll join me again in some future videos. Thank you so much, bye!